Well, hello again, folks. I wanted to go over some of the progress that I've been making over the last week or so on this kit. I've drilled out a bunch of things, as you can see. There's awesome windows. All right. I got the same on the reverse using the templates that I created, which is kind of nice. I haven't done the white blocking on the inside yet to see, but got some stuff in here. Now, I would like to mention that you should light block first before you start drilling your holes, or you run into a couple issues that I've run into here. And I'm always impatient with this stuff and start drilling holes before I light block. And that's something that I sometimes remember and sometimes don't. But when you start getting into these things, you just start going, and it happens. Ran into a couple issues with this guy here. There's like one drill hole that kind of bounced and didn't give enough room for it, so there's a very large window on one of these, but no big deal. I still haven't gotten the top part or any of the supplementary windows from the picture I'm using as a reference in these areas here. Those will be next. I haven't decided yet how I want to do this one, looking from the reference pics, but for the most part, these are coming from the lights that I can see from the studio model in the first encounter with a Romulan Warbird, and I believe that towards the end of the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation. Anyways, now, as you saw up here, excuse the mess on my desk. I don't know if the rest of you modelers out there have the same, but I have this organized chaos where I've got this area right here to work with, and everything else is just supplies. I know where everything is, but it looks like a mess. Anyways, I'm sure that you're seeing the Enterprise D up here in the background. I've also been working on that quite a bit and prototyping some boards in the meantime, like this guy. So this is to simulate as close as I can to a flash for the Federation navs and strobes. So this is what I ended up with after playing around with various resistances, and I turned around and put one here that works great. Hopefully I'll be able to find some way to squeeze that into an Enterprise D. I'm not entirely sure. Well, we'll see. This kit doesn't have much room. I'm currently waiting on some strip lighting to come through, but I wanted to go over that because I've decided I wanted to make some sort of diorama similar to the picture shown here. And let's see where I wanted to get here. Let me show you where I am with the Enterprise as well, because I'm jumping back and forth between the two kits. Okay, so like I said, that first episode at the end of Season 1 in The Next Generation, where you see the Romulan Warbird for the first time after like a century. The Federation hadn't dealt with them. The Cadet Series kit and the Adversaries kit are actually pretty close in scale. I think the Enterprise is a little bit bigger than it should be comparatively, but they're pretty close. So I plan on putting them together. But here's an example of the nacelle lighting for the Enterprise D. This will actually have some 2 3mm blue LEDs, one pointing towards the back, one pointing towards the front. At the moment, there's only a 3-light strip of LED strip in there, and the plastic is just opaque enough that it has a really nice even glow through it from the piece. Now you can see at the top I also have a little spot drilled, and that will be the white nav light on the back of it, steady on. There is a piece of fiber optic that's been in there and sanded down and super glued in from the back side. It looks pretty good. I have to figure out how I'm going to get the light blocking. You can actually see the blue through it right now. How I'm going to get all that stuff in there. And here's a picture of one of the Bassard collectors with 2 red 3mm LEDs in there. And since it's opaque, it looks really, really even. I know the hot spots from the iPhone are a little bit much, but it still looks pretty good when you're looking at the two on the side. And from the side, this looks amazing. It's got the missing glow here and towards the tail end, but I mean, you get a good idea of what we're looking for here. But we'll get that all together. I'm still waiting for the strip lighting to come in for it. I did pick up the clear resin aftermarket parts for the Scale Enterprise D. This is the deflector dish. So all I have to do is put a blue LED behind this and dull coat it so it diffuses really nicely and paint it up. It also comes with solid clear blue nacelles and red Bussard collectors, but I won't be using that on this particular build. But a few of the things I did want to show you where I ran into issues so far. Let me disconnect this battery here. Woo! Hey, tossing stuff. There we go. Anyways, pull the nacelle off. So, what I ran into with this guy is you can see that there are these little triangles of styrene that I've put in place, as well as the chunks in the middle here. That was because when you put the nacelles on, they hang down, and it was really obvious that those weren't the way they were supposed to go. So, I mean, they were literally angled way down. So I put that in there and straightened them out based on the engineering hull, secondary hull, so that they're even. And there's a little bowing in this kit, so I mean, they're still off kilter by a bit. I haven't figured out yet how I want to straighten that, or even if I want to bother. But yeah, that's that. So I put these in here, and now you have the guides for these to sit just perfectly on here, straight. Oh, there we go. And now they straighten out, and they at least look even. You can see how off kilter it is, actually. It looks like the plastic's a little bent, but yeah, that works great. You got to fill that in with a little bit of putty and smooth it out once it's all done. Now you're probably looking at this and thinking, well, why hasn't he drilled out the trenches? Something that I've never tried before, although I did do a few mock-ups to test it, and it works quite great. Monoman Tom did a preview of a clear Enterprise D in 1400 scale and how he used a metal tape to carry his current from inside to the pylons without having to drill. Now, I did a few quick tests and using tin tape, actually, and it works amazingly well. I was kind of surprised. So I'm going to try to use that technique and use thin strips of a tin tape to supply my power to the top. Now, it will be fragile up here, but after some coats of paint and a few other things getting in here, it should be pretty good as long as nothing ever happens to the model itself, and if it's on display, it should be fine for its duration. But those pieces of tin tape will supply the current to it, and I've already tried it, like I said, and it worked amazingly well. I was kind of put out the first time I did it because it wouldn't go on, but I didn't have a good connection with my clamp. Actually, let me turn these guys off. There we go. So, I also have these little cutouts that I made that will be light blocking for the red Bussards in the nacelles. I'll put 2 little holes in there and shrink tubing around the LEDs so that none of the red light passes back into the blue. And I have these nifty little 1.5 millimeter LEDs that are cool white for the nav lights at the top of the nacelles. Those will go in. I'll also use a couple of those for the strobe in here. I'm going to try to put the blinking lights on the saucer section. I know that they don't really blink in the show. I mean, there's a bunch of different models they use, but some of them go in and out. And some of the lights blink and some of them don't. So I'm going to use some creative thought here and try to do it. And the only problem is I have to figure out where I can fit this monstrosity in there. I mean, even when I trim it down quite a bit, it's going to be It's going to be a tight squeeze if I want to actually house it within the model itself. That leaves the saucer section, and that'll probably get in the way with a lot of lights. So I'm looking at probably having to put this in the base instead and run wires through the copper tube I used to mount it to the base to work correctly. But we'll see how that goes. This is going to be an ongoing project for quite a while. I'm doing a lot of job interviews right now, so that takes away from time. But in the meantime, I'm still plugging away at this, and I jump back and forth between the two kits when I get bored. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully I'll be able to get both kits done and then start deciding on a base. I haven't quite figured out how I want to do that yet, but we'll figure it out. Anyway, for more awesome science fiction models, make sure to stop by at sci-fi model action.com.